My name is Bill. I'm with B&B Exotics Plumeria. Thank you for coming to the Busy Bee for this talk. I'm sorry my partner is not here. He is in Mount Dora doing an event and a lecture there as well. For the first time in decades, we double booked ourselves. So I apologize, you only have one of us today, but I'm the first bee, so that's good. So a little bit about ourselves. We have been a grower, an importer, hybridizer, and seller of plumeria for almost 30 years now. We got our start way back when in the early days when we saw a man named Nui in Thailand who was growing seeds. For his birthday, his father gave him an acre of land, and he went around and collected all of these plumeria seeds and started planting them. And he started to have amazing varieties blooming, all brand new varieties from seed. That caught our eye, and so since then we became friends, and we have been working with him now, propagating and developing thousands of varieties of plumeria. So we plant about 50,000 seeds a year over on about 600 or 700 acres in Thailand. And out of that 50,000 seeds, we limit it down to 40,000 trees, which are then planted in the ground and grown. We will watch them and notice what they do, how they bloom, what their growth habit is, and so forth as we're developing the varieties and hand-picking and choosing which varieties we want to bring to the world. And so all of these varieties that you see here are varieties from there. And some of them are older varieties, so the prices are a little less expensive. And some of them are newer varieties, and when there's less availability, that makes the price a little bit more. So what you will notice with these is if you give it time and you don't want to pay $200 for a plumeria now, wait a couple of years, maybe 3 years, and we will be bringing the price down for you as we produce the plants from that variety. And we are located in Indian Harbor Beach, just about 40 minutes north of here. And we are by appointment. Sometimes people don't think we have doctor's appointments or go out to eat, and they just show up at our place. And so please have a confirmed appointment with us if you would like to come to our nursery. We also have a very nice website that took months to develop, and it's fun to shop on it. We've also added a gift line and home line, t-shirts, and now recently a ceramics collection for displaying your plumeria blossoms. From 30 years of collecting those, we're finally getting some of them out of the house, so I get the house back. And but you get to enjoy those. A lot of them are handmade pieces, signed, and you'll see them on our website in the ceramics collection. We also have a jewelry line that's come out that's all nature inspired. So if you like sparkly pins, brooches, pendants, that sort of thing, we have those there. So let's get to it. We will be doing events now on the east coast of Florida. For the last 4 years, we've been hosting events over in Mount Dora and along the west coast, and now we're going to be bringing it soon to this side of the state, sometime in June on a Saturday. And if you follow our Facebook page, and please do take our card, all of that information is on there, we will be announcing when we'll be doing a 3-hour talk about plumeria. There'll also be a large question and answer period, as well as Polynesian dancers and lots of plants and everything for sale. So that's to be announced shortly. We learned that plumerias are originally from Mexico and Central America, not Hawaii, as everybody thinks. Hawaii made them popular with their ceremonies, with leis and that sort of thing. But plumerias are originally from Mexico and Central America. We've traced it all the way back to the very single first variety called Sac Nocte. And Sac Nocte is a variety that is what we call a species plant. And species plants are varieties that are found growing wild throughout the Central Americas Mexico, and throughout the Caribbean. Species Plumerias like this one, for example, will always have white flowers and a yellow center, and they will always have very unusually shaped leaves. Every species Plumeria has its own shape of leaf, and they're fun to grow. This one grows, it's woody, but it is a little wiry, so it kind of grows up and flops when it starts to grow these amazing huge balls of flowers on here. There are two main classifications of Plumeria. Species is one of them, and then there's rubras, which are everything else that you see up here. And rubras are your hybrids in the Plumeria world. When you're growing seeds, rubras, when you grow the rubra seeds, every single seed in a seed pod is a brand new variety. It will have a different strand of DNA from the mother plant. The flowers may look similar to the mother plant, but they are not identical in any means. And the nice thing is you could have hundreds of new colors from those. Species Plumeria are a little bit different, where probably 30 or 40% of the seeds produced by these plants are exact copies of the mother plant. It's the only type of Plumeria category that produces possibilities of exact copies of the plant. Plumerias also come in 4 main size classifications. Dwarf Plumerias, and let's see, I do have a dwarf here. The Starry Night is what they call a dwarf variety. Very slow growing, will top out between 4 and 6 feet tall, and then it will work on broadening its canopy. Compact varieties are the next size up. They will grow a little bit more quickly, and they will top out at between 5 and 8 feet tall. Semi-compact varieties, again, growing more quickly, will top out between 8 and 12 feet tall, and then your tall growers, which will grow 20 or 30 feet tall if you let them. If you're down in the Keys, or if you're in Hawaii and Polynesia, Singapore, you see these massive, huge trees. That's the tall varieties out there. The rubras have 13 plus different leaf styles now within that category. Lots of different variations of this general shape. Let's see, page 2. The only way to identically reproduce any one of these varieties is by grafting them or by cutting them. If you make a cutting, you're going to then root it, and then you'll have a brand new variety of this, a brand new plant of this. If you were to take plants and you were to graft them, I will show you an example. This is what we call a scion, and when we graft it, it's about half the length. And this is a rootstock that we've grown that's usually 3 or 4 years old. And when we graft, we will attach the scion to the rootstock, and we will let them grow together. It's a process that some people do very quickly and sell very quickly if they want to make money very quickly, but we like to let them grow together and bond together so that we know that the graft is well healed and has taken well. The difference between a new graft and a seasoned graft, when you have a straight line on both ends of the pieces and you put them together, you get a perfectly crisp straight line. And it's going to look like that for a while, maybe months. And so if somebody is trying to sell you a plant that has a perfectly straight line for a graft, buyer beware. You know that it's newly grafted, and you don't know if that graft is going to take well. You don't know if part of it might die off. We don't know what's going to happen with it. So I suggest looking for grafts like this, where they're very gnarly and nubby. That is an indication of age. And as we grow older, we get a little gnarly and nubby too. But these grafts will also do the same thing, and give it 5 years and the bark will grow right over the graft site, and it will be continuous and nice and smooth. So grafts, by the way, are not weaker plants. It's like when you break a bone. the bone will heal itself, and it's actually stronger at that break site. We have had grafted plants go through all the hurricanes in '04. Not fun, but none of them broke. None of them broke at the graft site. So the grafts are strong and can tolerate big storms like that. And I'll put this back so you can enjoy the pretty picture. Knowing where your plumerias come from is important. If you find plumerias on the side of the road, don't know the history of them, if a friend gives you a cutting or a plant, that's a mystery. You don't know the history of it again. We call those noids, Noids, no IDs. You have to do that because a lot of people will, like we were talking, a lot of people will give plants a very special name, and then they'll try and sell those plants under a very special name. If they don't know much about the history of that variety, it could actually already be a named variety that they're just unaware of. It could just be something that was never produced. If it was grown from seed, that's a different story. Seedlings, as I said, are all brand new varieties. And so then they could have named it something. But there is that difference with that. So if somebody is selling you something that they don't know the history of and they're giving it a fancy, cute, catchy name, chances are that it is not an actual bona fide variety. It might just be something that was a backyard find that they've named. And so we don't want something like that to take over people's collections, because some of these are a little pricey. And so when you're building a nice collection of plumeria, it's good to know exactly what you have. So we always say buy from trusted sellers with that, known sellers. Photo identification of flowers is next to impossible in plumeria world. The reason is that plumerias are thermally affected by heat and humidity. The hotter we are, the more humid we are, the more deep and intense the colors will be on the plants. So this flower blooming now in the 80s with lighter humidity could be much lighter a look. It may not even have a lot of this pink on here. It might be mostly yellow. And so that if someone comes to us and says, "What is this?" we don't know, because we don't know when you took the photo, what time of the year it was, where it was. It's different in Florida versus California. California, they don't have humidity. So there's a lot of different factors that go into photo identification. But anybody that wants to save their reputation will not ID a photo, a plumeria through a photo. It's just not the right way to do it. Okay, we'll go into winter dormancy. We're just coming out of winter dormancy now, of course, but when the plants are dormant, they're not dead. They just slow their growth habit way down to almost zero. And what that means is you don't want to fertilize them then, because they do not have any quick method of absorbing the fertilizer through their roots, which are still alive. They do not want any water. They just do not take up the water quickly enough. And if somebody is wanting to kill their plant with kindness in the wintertime, water it. And the roots will rot because they can't absorb the water fast enough. And so eventually that will work its way up to the tree, and then your tree will topple over. So only special circumstances in the wintertime, if your plumeria develops a wrinkled look, do we get out a spray bottle and we mix water with a couple of drops of Super Thrive. Super Thrive is a wonderful, highly concentrated fertilizer. And it is highly concentrated. So when I say an eyedropper with 1 or 2 drops, I mean it. Don't use a capful. A capful is too intense and will burn your plant. So per gallon of water, 1 or 2 drops of Super Thrive, put it into a spray bottle, and just nicely spray the plant from top to bottom. Do this over several days, a week. The plant will absorb the moisture that it needs through the bark, and then those wrinkles will plump up and go away, kind of like our creams when we want to get rid of a wrinkle here. Yes. Well, when the plant is dormant, there won't be any leaves or blooms, so you're going to be spraying the bark. Yeah, and that's how you know that a plant is exceedingly dry in dormancy. Otherwise, they should be just nice and firm and plump like this, and they won't do anything. They won't leaf out. They won't bloom until they're coming out of dormancy. And that brings us to springtime. And plumerias do wake up slowly. So when you start to see, I call them juicy tips or shiny tips, tiny little leaf claws, which are tiny itty bitty little points of the leaves starting to emerge from the tip. That's a sign that the sap is starting to flow again in the plant, and you can start watering lightly. When they're just waking up, it's like getting out of bed. You're not going 100 miles an hour immediately, at least I'm not. And so when they're just slowly coming back to life, you're going to water slowly. You're going to give them a little bit less water, a little less frequently, and as they start to get their momentum, then you'll increase the water. That way you're not overwatering them when they are coming out of dormancy. Most people will kill them with kindness and just go back to normal watering as soon as the warm weather gets here. But you don't want to do that. You want to give them a little bit of a break and ease them into it. One thing that's good to do in the springtime for potted plumeria especially is to refresh the soil. You can go maybe 2 or 3 years without refreshing the soil in a container, but plumerias do enjoy nice fresh soil. It's like fresh sheets on the bed. And so in the springtime, once they're coming, I'm sorry, I missed a good one. Once, well, that'll work. Yes, that'll work. Not in my house, but I'll be in trouble for that. But that's funny. But anyway, you're going to refresh the soil once they are back to life and producing leaves. Of course, removing them from the pot, you want to be careful with the roots. But now that it's coming out of dormancy, if you do break a root, it's not the end of the world. The plant will be able to heal itself. That's why in the wintertime we never repot, we never trim roots, we never make cuttings, we never do any of that because the plant is dormant and it cannot heal itself. Additionally, if you're to make a cutting in the winter, and a lot of people say take your cuttings in the fall when they're dormant or in the winter when they're dormant, that cutting can't root itself quickly at that point because it's sleeping, let's say. And so 9 times out of 10, it's not going to do, and it will rot on you. And the piece that you take the cutting from will also not be able to heal itself, and you might develop some sort of bacteria or stem rot at that top. And so don't do any kind of pruning, cutting, trimming in the wintertime when they're dormant. Wait till the spring, and spring is the best time to do that. That way, if you make a cutting in the springtime, you can root that cutting, and it has all season to root before the next dormancy next fall. And also, the plant has all season long to heal itself before winter dormancy again. So those are just simple little things to remember. Yes? Yes. Yes, definitely. Definitely. And we'll go over how to trim in just a minute. Let's see. The best soil to use for potted plants or plants in the ground is well-draining soil. If you're in the ground and you're in a mucky area that doesn't drain and you dig a hole and there's just water in the bottom, you're too close to the water table for plumeria. You need to raise that plumeria up, maybe with a berm or maybe in a pot. We have potted plumeria that are 30 years old, trunks like this that are doing just fine in containers. They're not picky about that. With your potted plants, you do want well-draining soil. And we use any kind of a potting soil, a cactus mix that's super well-draining. Nothing that says moisture retaining or moisture control. Those two things mean there are additives in that soil that collect the water that burst open when the soil becomes at a certain dryness, which keeps your soil wetter longer. Plumerias are tropical. They love water, but they want to dry out between watering. So the soils that have that moisture control, it's not good for them. It keeps the soil too wet too long. Okay, we mix that soil with perlite and also a mini pine bark chip. And it's important to have a pine bark chip versus any other kind of a wood chip because pine bark does not mold. Um, when we were learning decades ago, we had a big batch of soil mixed, and they did not use pine bark in it. They used regular wood pieces in it. And it was great right away. But then in a month, everything started turning white. And that was the mold growing on the wood. And so everything that we had potted, we had to completely redo because you don't want a moldy soil for your plumerias. They're not going to be happy in it. So when we do the soil, we use a well-draining potting mix, too close to the speaker, and perlite, and then the little mini wood chip. About 80% soil to 20% perlite, and then we like to have the wood chips so that they do surface occasion. I don't know if you can see the wood chips in here, but we buy a small wood chip that's like this. The largest wood chip in that bag would be like this. And I know some of the big box stores do carry that. Paul, do you carry the wood chips here? Okay. 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 Well, that'll work so long as it's nice and small. Or you can be crazy like us and have a wood chipper and you send it through. So, and it takes forever with a little wood chipper. So, okay, that's good to know. I'm going to have to look at that. So, we may be getting some of that from you. It's a pine bark, a mini pine bark wood chip. So, what did you say it was? The product that you have? Pine Fines. So, yeah, we're going to look into that. That's brand new to me. Yes. You can use those, sure, sure, but you want them actually smaller than that. Orchids, you want a very loose medium. We're just getting into orchids. It's going to be a new problem. I know it. I know it. But yes, it needs to be actually probably a chip that's a quarter to a half of the size of a normal chip that you would use for orchids. So they'll work well that way. Let's see. Containers need to have proper holes for drainage. Holes in the bottom are great. Holes in the bottom on the sides are also great if you can find a pot like that. We had somebody recently come to us and say my plumeria died because of the pot that it was in, and they didn't realize that it was because of the pot that it was in. She had little itty bitty 1/8 inch to maybe 3/16 inch diameter holes all over the bottom of the pot. But the soil plugged the holes very quickly, and so the pot could never drain. And so unfortunately, her plant had root rot, and then it worked its way up to the plant because she wasn't aware of it. She had soil soup, and the plant died. That was unfortunate. Ooh, this is it. Yeah, that looks great. Yep, buy that. Yep, there you go. Buy it by the truckload. Oh, okay, good, good. I like that. That's great. Um, so the types of pots to use for your plumerias, ceramic pots, talavera pots, any kind of pot with a glaze on it, plastic, resin pots are all excellent for plumerias. No raw terracotta. That's the one no. Some people will have plants in terracotta and they might say my plant always it doesn't look like it's always happy. And it's because the terracotta is just too porous a material. The water literally wicks right out of the walls of the pot, and your plant will be starved for moisture. And so no terracotta pots for there unless the terracotta pot is sealed. There are terracotta pots out there that do have a sealant on them. So no raw terracotta pots. Clay is different. Clay would always have a glaze on it. So when they're firing clay pots, they would always have a glaze on it, I would think. So that's fine. Now, if you're using a saucer under the pot, that's fine. Oh, I don't like messes all over the patio either. But what you want to do is you want to raise the pot up out of the saucer. So we use a tiny gauge pea gravel and just fill the saucer with it. And then we put the pot down on top of that. That way, the pot is suspended over the saucer, but it's not sitting in the water, so your plant can drain thoroughly and dry out. So otherwise, it's keeping the plant too wet too long. So be sure to do that with your plants. If you have your pot with no saucer directly on a flat surface like this, patio, driveway, pool deck, anything like that, sometimes what's in the soil can work its way through to your holes, and it can block the holes. And so you will not be aware of that happening in there. So what we suggest is going to the box stores and buying the ceramic 2x2 sheets of tile that people put on a black backsplash, and just take 4 of those tiles and put them under your plant. And that's a really nice, cheap, easy way of raising that pot up off the ground or whatever it's sitting on, 1/4 of an inch, so it'll enable the pot to drain properly. So important. If it's just, even if it's sitting in a flower bed, it can work its way to blocking those holes from the inside. So, okay? Yes? Watering, if we're in cooler weather like this, it's generally going to be once a week. And when we water a container like this, because we have well-draining soil, we fill this up once and let it drain through. And then we fill it up 2, 3, 4, 5 times and let it drain through each time. And the reason we do it so many times is when the soil is bone dry, you put the water on the soil and it'll bead. And that water will run to the inside of the pot, run down the inside walls of the pot and out the holes. And it never gets to the center of the pot where the roots are. So each time that you fill this with water and let it drain through, you're working your way into where the roots are. Moisture meters are a gift. Have a good moisture meter. A couple weeks ago before a show, I was getting our plants ready for the show, and I had a pot that was totally bone dry, crispy on top. And I thought it was ready for a watering. Something told me to get the moisture meter because I still felt a little weight in the pot. And so I put the moisture meter in there, and the core of it was listed as wet. So I almost overwatered my plant, and I've been doing this for a long time. So moisture meters, if you find a good one, get them. They're great. Yes? Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, you can, sir. Sure, you can do that. You can do that. I used to use my finger all the way down in, but I found that I'm not accurate. So the moisture meter is much better for that. You definitely want to, when you're going from pot to pot to pot, you want to clean the probe on the moisture meter well. So you're not transferring anything from one pot to the next. So that's important. Fertilizer. We like Osmocote, and they have Osmocote there in the tubs. It is mixed with micronutrients, which is terrific for your plant. It is a 14-14-14 time-released, slow-release Osmocote. Works fantastic for plants. Osmocote is developed so that it has a polymer coating on it so that it doesn't melt in high heat. And every time you add water to the pot, a little bit of the soil is then released into the plant and keeps the plant happy. The micronutrients are just further additives to keep your plant happy. Usually Osmocote, depending upon how much it's watered, will last 3 to 4 months in your pot. We put it on our plants at the beginning of the season, and we find that we don't have to do anything most likely until mid-summer to end of summer if we need to give them any more additives. The way that, well, we're buying our Osmocote in giant 100 to 50 pound bags. So we have, I love Italian food. And so we have Parmesan cheese containers everywhere. And we clean those out, and I'll use the tall container and I'll fill it with the Osmocote. Use the small holes, and then I sprinkle liberally around the soil surface. If it's in the ground, I'll go around 2 or 3 times, and then I mix it lightly into the soil surface so I'm not disturbing any roots that are closer to the surface. If it's in a container, you want to put down approximately a good hefty tablespoon per inch of thickness of the trunk. And so that would be once around generally with the Parmesan cheese container. So, but it's great. Keeps your hands free and out of the, and you of course don't want to be anywhere near the dust when you're putting the fertilizer into your container. It's not good for you to breathe in. Yes. Uh, Generally, in a 4 month product, the product will just waste away to almost nothing in there. And then I would gauge how close you are to the end of the season. Because the one important thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to have extra fresh fertilizer floating around in the soil as the plant is coming into dormancy again. So again, the plant in dormancy slows its growth way down, slows its absorption of nutrients way down, and then you're left with fertilizer floating in the soil that's going to burn your roots and rot the roots on you. There are fertilizers out there that are considered 6 to 9 month blends. Even in Florida, I would be hesitant on using something like that because I have had many people come to me that have used that and tell me that they had their plants die in the wintertime. And it's because the fertilizer was not completely absorbed in the growing season and the roots succumbed to burning. And so it's unfortunate, you know, they're good fertilizers, but unfortunately they lasted too long. And so, yes. Um, we like to fertilize once we start to see growth in the plant. You don't, again, if the plant is dormant, it's not absorbing anything, so you don't want to start that too early. Once you see growth, juicy tips, that's my saying, and little leaves coming out of the top, then it's okay to put your fertilizer down. So, and there are other things that we also add to the fertilizer. The mycorrhizae fungus is good to add to the soil. It's very, very good for root growth and the wellness of roots and the overall general wellness of the plant. Worm castings, they're also right here. Worm castings as a top dressing are fantastic for fighting things like whitefly, thrips, leafhoppers, any kind of pests like that. We've found that with worm castings as a top dressing, they'll tend to avoid those plants for whatever reason. So do you find that too with those? Yeah, good. And especially whitefly. I don't know if you've experienced whitefly. In fact, I was potting plants yesterday, and the wind blew, and I had a big bunch of perlite that caught the wind and blew around the corner of the house. And the next thing I know, Brian's coming around. He says, "We have whitefly." And I said, "No, let me see." And sure enough, it was the perlite that blew around the corner of the house that looked like little white specks floating around in the wind. So it's kind of funny. We don't have whitefly, but the perlite looked like whitefly. So if you see something that looks like perlite flying around in the wind, then you have whitefly and you need to do something about it. I'm sorry? Yeah, they're almost microscopic, but if you look extremely closely, they have two perfectly little shaped wings and a little tiny body. And they look like a speck of dust floating around in the air if you have them. Years and years and years ago, we had, there's several types of whitefly. There's one called the Raguso spiraling whitefly, which makes a very cool pattern under your leaf. It looks like a coil. And if you have that, then you need to act fast with that. because that can be extremely invasive. Several years ago, we had a very nice community call us. We went over there to look at these trees, and these trees were totally black from top to bottom, everywhere, just jet black. And of course, they were dying. And it was because the whitefly, their secretions on the tree turned to a black mold. And so when that happened, the entire tree turned black and died. And this was a 30-foot tall tree and 30-foot wide. And it was just a terribly awful infestation of Raguso spiraling whitefly. So if you see the cool little pattern, you have to act. And there are lots of products out there that are designed for whitefly. 3-in-1 is also very good for whitefly as well. But that's what we would do. Now, getting back to here. Alfalfa pellets. If you go to your local feed stores, you buy the big pellets that the farm animals eat. So long as it's pure alfalfa, grind it up, and you can mix that as a nice boost of nitrogen in your soil. The plants love it. In the dead of summertime, when we're going through intense heat situations, if we're in the hundreds for days and days or months, and we're super dry, something that's very good to add to your soil is, I lost my train of thought. Something that's good to add to the soil is Epsom salts. And we do 1 nice tablespoon per gallon of water, and then we water that in. And the Epsom salts help the plants deal with heat stress. And so you'll find that they'll green up the leaves beautifully in that inferno. You'll have the most beautiful leaves in the neighborhood if you're doing that. And it's good for the plant because it gives the plant the extra boost that it needs to tolerate intense heat. Mm-hmm. 1 heaping tablespoon per gallon of water. So some people will apply it liberally on the top of the soil and then water it in that way. Just Epsom salts that are designed for plants. So it has to say for plants on it. Anything that's strictly for the bathtub, I wouldn't use. This is something that you want for plants on there. Mm-hmm. Magnesium sulfate, yep. And you have it right over here, don't you? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's good to do. I have a lot to learn too in this world of plants. Let's see. Sir. Right. When the plants, good question. When the plants are smaller like this, uh, although they're designed to go right out into the hottest part of your yard in full sun, right now they don't have a broad canopy where they can shade the trunk and shade the soil around where it's planted. Um, so what's going to happen if you put it out into that super heat inferno is you're going to have sunburn on your trunk, and you're going to have a plant that's probably becoming stressed out by the heat. So in this case, for the first year or two of plants this size, I would keep them in intense, hot, filtered light situations, like under a big tree like this is perfect, but where it's the hottest spot. And then once they grow up and bloom and develop their canopies, then they can shelter themselves on their own, and then you can put them out into those really super hot spots in your yard that nothing else will grow in. These will do great there. But you need a big canopy. That umbrella will cool everything and protect it from sun burning. Yes? If the plant is blooming, I might let it finish its thing before you want to repot it, only because it might have some sort of stress from being repotted, and that might affect the flowers. The plant might abort the inflorescence, which is the entire bloom stalk. You don't want that to happen if it's blooming beautifully. So I would just let it do its thing and then take care of that. Mm-hmm. Yes? Yeah. Right. Right. It's There is, in the world of plumeria, there is no rhyme or reason for how these babies wake up every year. Some years, the same plant will just send all of its flowers out first. Some years, the plant might send all of its leaves out first. One year, it might be a little bit of both. You just never know. There is no golden rule for them coming back. But if you have mostly leaves and no flowers, I would say it's time to fertilize them. They need a little extra nutrient boost. If you want to use something with a slightly higher phosphorus to promote blooming, you can do that, but be careful. Only use it once. Don't use it all the time. Super blooms, triple phosphates, the plants don't need that. It's like when we're taking vitamin C, we only absorb a certain amount of it and the rest we get rid of. Well, the plants do the same thing with phosphorus. So they only use so much of it and then they'll get rid of it and waste the rest of it. And it can also affect the plant, make it grow very lanky, make it grow spindly and weak. So you want to stay away from any kind of high phosphorus fertilizer. That's why we like the 14, 14, 14. As long as it's well balanced like that, it doesn't matter if it's 20, 20, 20, 11, 11, 11, 14, 14. They're all the same. They all work the same. Excalibur, I would use the 6 month, not the 9 month. There really isn't any place in this country that we are growing steadily long enough for the 9 month. And a lot of the people that came to me with their plants dying in the wintertime put the Excalibur on too late in the season. That was a 9 month variety, and they had a lot of extra fertilizer left over in the soil. And they had a problem with that. We've experimented when that product first came out. We experimented with it, and we did tests with Excalibur 6 and 9 month. We did tests with Osmocote. We did tests with pure chemicals that we can buy from our wholesale growers. The Osmocote and the Excalibur worked very well, but 6 month Excalibur or the 14, 14, 14, those were the best out of everything. And some people say, well, I use my Excalibur and my plant is phenomenal. And before that, they never ever put fertilizer on their plant because they had to get the designer fertilizer that's out there. Well, if you have a plant that's never been fertilized and then all of a sudden you fertilize it, you're going to see some results eventually. And so that's why that was happening. And but with any kind of fertilizer, you put it on the plant, it's not going to happen overnight. It takes a while to become incorporated in the plant, and it's generally, thank you, about a season before you start to see the benefits of your labor this year. So come next year, if you start a nice fertilizing plan, next year you will have that impact that you're looking for from adding fertilizer to the plant. Beautiful flowers, beautiful leaves, healthier growing, nicer roots. And so once you start it, then just keep it going. And that's the trick, yeah. Okay. Uh, well, at least a half a day's worth of sun is fine. Um, is it morning sun you said? Okay. Morning sun is less intense than afternoon sun, so that's good. But it probably just needs a little fertilizer in order to give it a little boost. If they're big trees that are being fussy and not blooming, we'll use a 15, 30, 15 time release fertilizer. It's blooming? Okay, then you don't need that. Scratch that. Okay, but any huge trees that are not blooming for you, that are being stubborn, we will bump up to a 15, 30, 15 for only one application for the extra phosphorus to try and encourage that plant to start blooming the way it should be blooming. So we don't ever use the 15, 30, 15 on smaller plants like this. Yes? You can. Certainly, you can. Something very cool that we've been recently experimenting with are banana peels. And if you make a tea from them and boil the banana peels for 20 or 30 minutes, we've been putting that on our orchids, our new hobby, and also on adeniums. And literally within days, we have seen remarkable results. So they're blooming and they're vibrant, and it's a huge, huge difference right away. So there's something in there that really works. Yes. Yep. Yep. I have too many leaves to polish them, but but okay. Let's see. So pruning, the best time to prune, we discussed, is in the springtime. But there are four reasons that you want to prune. One, of course, is to maintain an overall shape or an overall size of your tree. The second is to maintain branches growing into either a structure or another tree. Another reason is if you have ingrown branches crossing one another in the canopy. Plumerias do not like to touch one another with their branches. They will develop a weak spot. And so if you have branches growing into one another, one of those branches needs to be trimmed back, or you stand the chance of killing one or both of those branches. And so that's very important that you have to open the canopy up a little bit. Yes. Uh, in this part of the state, it is anywhere from, I would say, late February to the beginning of May. And then we'll go right from that and right into 100 degrees and 100% humidity. There is no graduation, it goes right to it. No, now is the time to prune. Yep, now is the time. Yep, yep, yes. Okay. Winter, it all depends on what our nighttime average temperature is. Um, I like to use 50 degrees because it's easy to remember. Really, plumerias do pretty well until about 42. And then anything south of that, then you really need to worry about. If you're going to have any kind of hard freeze or a freeze watch or warning, and the plants are in containers, don't trust the weathermen. They are wrong. They don't know how long the cold is going to be here. They don't know exactly how cold it's going to get. So you want to be safe than sorry with a lot of these collector editions. So that's when we like to bring them in or have them in a greenhouse. If you do have the luxury of having a greenhouse and you heat with electricity, make sure you have a backup, because one year we didn't have a backup and the power went out because everybody turned their heaters on. And so I watched the temperature go down, 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 down in the greenhouse. And thankfully, where we are on the beach, we only had about half hour's worth of that cold temperature, which never really made it into the greenhouse. So we were lucky. But since then, we have gas-powered, propane-powered heat sources if need be for that. Yes. Uh-huh. That happens. You have a warm spot in your yard, and that actually does happen. We have some neighbors that are lucky enough to have warm spots like that in their house. One of them has a 6-foot board-on-board privacy fence about 10 feet away from the house, and it's a nice little cordoned off area with the fencing, and it just stays warmer there. And they have a variety called Saint Germain, which is the white flower that smells, and they make the perfumes from. And that just sits there, and it sometimes blooms all winter long. And here I am going like this because mine are all dormant, and I'm missing the flowers, but theirs looks very pretty. But it's because it's a hot spot. So if we were hot all year long, then your plants would never go dormant. So you can, up north, we have people that will keep them awake all year long. If you're in places in the world like Thailand, you'll have a year-round growing season. So it is possible to keep them awake, but it takes a little effort. Yes? We want to see signs of growth in the plant. So juicy tips, little tiny leaf claws emerging from the top of the end of the branch, then you can prune. That means the sap is flowing, and then it can heal. Uh-huh. Sure. Yep. we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about it right now. That's why I brought this little guy. This was a plant that grew way, 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 way up, and it never bloomed. Even though it was mature and capable of blooming, it was just stubborn. So what we did was we made a cut. You can see that right there. That cut was then, you see the brown stuff in there? That's cinnamon. We use cinnamon by the gallons. And cinnamon is a natural antiseptic. It's right on the top. Yep. You'll notice if I hold the plant upright that the cut's on a slight angle. Never cut perfectly flat because the water can't drain out of the cut. Always cut on a slight angle. And what you want to do when you're making a cut is you want to look at all the little smiley faces on the side of the branch. That's where the leaves were growing once. If you can plan your cut above those leaf nodes without actually piercing a leaf node on a slight angle, I know it's a lot to ask, but if you can do that, then what you're going to do is get branching like that. And that's 5 branches coming out. So, and it's going to be a great shaped plant now when this grows out. And so, right. Yep. As soon as I cut it, I liberally sprinkle the cinnamon on it, and I push it in with my fingertip. And if any, on the cut surface, yep. So now the cutting that I took off of it, I use a rooting hormone on the base of that. But this, I put cinnamon on. I did maybe 100 of these, and every single one that got the cinnamon was 100% perfect, didn't rot, started branching within a month or so. And this is the state of it now. So it's going to come out very nicely. And that's what I would do for yours. Only with yours, you'll probably have to take a couple sections out of it. And so you'll have a mid cut, which means it doesn't have a nice finished tip on it like this. It just has a cut end on the top and a cut end on the bottom. And you know which end is up by looking at the leaf nodes. If it's smiling, then it's right side up. If it's upside down and frowning, then it's upside down and it won't grow that way. People have tried to plant them upside down. Some people have said they did grow, but I don't believe it. But correct. You're following my notes beautifully. That is called callousing. And yes, every time you make a cutting, you're going to put it in a cool, dry place out of the sun. Some people say stand them up on end. I never have. I've always kept them laid down. And you'll do that for about 2 weeks. And what that does is it hardens the cut end over. And it makes kind of like a bump, which is we call a callus. That callus will produce roots very, very well. If you just take a freshly cut cutting without callusing it and put it in the ground or in a pot to root it, it has a very high chance of rotting at that point. So you always want to take a week or two to callus your cuttings over before you plant them. Cinnamon on the top and rooting hormone on the bottom, and then callus it. Yep. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. Right. Well, we like there to be enough plant left behind when after you're pruning it so that you're not damaging the plant. We've had some people that wanted to buy an expensive variety and then make a cutting on it right away and sell it so that they can get some of their money back. But if the plant can't sustain that much loss, why would you want to do that? It won't be a happy plant. You'll stress the plant out 9 times out of 10, and it probably won't make it. So we have a neighbor that stumps a plumeria in our neighborhood. And what that means is he takes his chainsaw every year and 3 feet up from the ground cuts it straight across. And every year that plant comes back and produces the most beautifully shaped canopy without any hesitation. I did that to one of my trees, dead. So I wouldn't do it. But It's age, really. When we take cuttings from plants, yes, we're propagating, but we're taking pieces from the plant where the plant can stand to lose it. If it's growing into something, if it's misshaped, if it's something where they're crossing in the center, those are all reasons to take a cutting and then start another plant. But if it's just taking this just to have another piece and to propagate it right away, I wouldn't do that. I would let the plant grow first, and then we like to leave 16 inches of plant behind, and we like to cut 16 inches off when we're doing that. So if you don't have that, at least that, I wouldn't do it. So, yes. Hold on a second. Right. No, it was one cut that just happened to be perfectly above 5 of the leaf nodes all the way around under the cut. So, and it's important, you can't cut through the leaf node because it's the leaf node that swells into the new branches. Okay? Sterilized tools. Super, super, super duper important. There's a lot of different diseases out there these days, one of which is called the mosaic virus. And the mosaic virus can affect your leaves, can affect the green parts of your tree, can affect the flowering. And on the leaves, if you look very closely at the leaf, every leaf has little tiny square cells in it. If you have mosaic virus, the cells will not all fill in, but they'll fill in kind of patchy, and it looks like a mosaic. And that's how it got its name. It also looks like on the green stems of the plant, bright purple or eggplant purple slashes of color. On the green smooth parts of the trees, like here, not on this one, but you'll see slashes of that eggplant purple also. And in your flowers, it'll be a completely random dark red splotchy all over the flower. The problem with mosaic virus is it's super contagious, and you can destroy your entire collection if you're going with your clippers from one plant to the next plant to the next plant without sterilizing your clippers each time. So what we use when we're pruning all of our trees and clipping off leaves and things, we buy surgical blades, by the thousands of them. And every surgical blade, it's one blade per tree for what I'm doing. I take it out of the sterilized package, and they're very sharp, so be careful with them. And I take my leaves off if I'm trimming rust or something else off the tree, and as soon as I'm done with that tree, that goes into a sharps container. And then I move to the next tree with a brand new blade. If you don't want to do that, you can use a blowtorch flame to heat up your metal surface, the cutting surface, and make sure you're thorough with it because you want to make sure you're burning off all of that sap that can contain the virus. You can also boil the blades or the clippers for 45 minutes at a really hard boil. That will kill the virus. Way back when, we used to think 91% isopropyl rubbing alcohol killed the virus, and that was enough, but it's not. We've found that there can still be on your shears little traces of the sticky parts of the sap that just build up into a kind of a gunk on your shear, and that can contain the virus. And so the isopropyl alcohol will not be effective in cleaning all of that off unless you scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub. So the best thing to do is to buy surgical blades. I like a 20 blade or a 22 blade. And you can even get the scalpel handle just like the surgeons have. They usually throw them right in, and it makes it very easy to use them. But just be careful because they're super sharp. Bleach you can use, but again, like isopropyl alcohol, it's not foolproof. Same thing. Same thing. And when you're making cuttings, if you want to put hydrogen peroxide on the open wound, you can do that too. Put it on a cotton ball and then dab it on there, and it'll foam, and that's fine. But cinnamon, I really love. So buy big bottles of cinnamon, and that really works the best, I think, for that. But mosaic is something you don't want to fool around with. That's why getting plants where you don't know where the history is, it could be something that somebody else cross-contaminated and you don't know that the virus is in it. The virus can lay dormant in the plant for years. It could just show itself if we're having some sort of a stress event like 105 degrees suddenly and super, super hot with high, high humidity. That might force the plant into showing that it has a virus in it. Yes. No, no, it does affect other plants as well. And as far as I know, you can cross contaminate from one kind of plant to another with that. So be careful with it. Buying the plumerias from Home Depot and Lowe's, sometimes you want to be careful with that too if you don't know the background of it. So anywhere you're buying them, be careful with that because the virus is, it can, we know people whose entire collections have been contaminated from it. So, good question. Seeds is the only way, if you had a virus plant that produced a seed pod, the virus does not then be carried along by the seeds. It stops at the seed pod, and every seed that you're planting is a brand new, fresh variety that is not contaminated. So, yes. Seedlings can take, as far as flowering, anywhere from 1 to 3 years. If you're in Thailand, it's 6 or 7 months because their season is so much more advanced than ours. And then you have some that take even longer than that to bloom. So it's a game of patience when you're growing seedlings. But they're all brand new varieties. You get to name them after someone you love or hate or can't stand or whoever. You can name it yourself. And then in this day and age with social media, if we have a plant that we really love in Thailand that we want to have everybody know right away, we'll put an amazing picture of it on social media, and literally in 10 or 15 minutes, everybody is going crazy over that new variety. And so actual registration of varieties is falling by the wayside. All of the big, big growers that are really out there producing new, incredible flowers, they don't have the time to fill out all the paperwork to register plumerias through the Plumeria Society of America. But everybody's doing that. And so people are putting their time into propagating instead of paperwork. So, yes. Yes, everyone are different from each other and different from the parent plant. No, let the pod mature. Pods take, and that's you're following my notes again. That's on the next page. Seed pods take anywhere from 8 to 10 months to grow and mature on the tree. Some might be a little longer. Some might be quick. Might be 7 months. You just never know. It's nature. There's no exact rule for it. But usually 8 to 10 months they'll be on the tree. Be safe and always put a little mesh bag over the seed pod if you want to collect those seeds. Don't be like I was several years ago where I thought, oh, I can run this errand and come back to the house because the pod opened and it was a windy day. And most of the seeds that were in that pod that I was waiting months to get blew away and I couldn't find them. So put a mesh bag on there, learn from my mistake, and put a mesh bag on there. And that mesh bag, it could be a laundry bag, fine mesh bag. Pantyhose works. Yep, I don't have any of those, but maybe I'll come over and ask for one of yours. But take the toes of the pantyhose and tie it up there with a knot on the end of it. All of that works great. You want to make sure that it's lightweight. You don't want a big heavy bag up there because that, if it gets wet, or catches the wind, it could snap the branch off. So you want to make sure that it's kind of lightweight and will let water flow through it and not collect water. Okay? It's just a matter of what's going on with the insect population around your trees. Unless you're hand pollinating, and that is something that you can do, and that's page 6 later. Nature, moths, tetrasphinx moth, butterflies, any kind of microscopic ant, even if you have those awful little insects called mites that make your leaves all gnarly and crunched up and discolored, those mites go right down the center of the flower and will fertilize your flowers every single time. So some people don't discourage mites, even though they make webs and all sorts of stuff on your trees, but you'll have the most incredible seed population from them. So, yeah, we're going to talk about that. Okay, so seed pods look like, without getting in front of that, look like a boomerang that looks like two cigars together, and then there's an umbilical cord, which was the original main stem of the flower cluster. And let's see, and I'll take this out. I don't have the full seed pod on here, but I do have half of a seed pod here. And so the seed pod just looks like a cigar, a brown cigar. Some varieties, they'll be green. And in that seed, depending upon how long it is, there could be up to 200 seeds in each half. And of course, each one of those are brand new varieties. So that's what it comes from the flower. Yeah. Yeah, the flower has to be pollinated. The flowers have both male and female components. And so the pollen from the parent, from the father, has to fertilize the ovary in the flower of the mother in order for it to become a seed pod. And so now there is a variety called Bali Whirl, which has 10 petals on it. It looks like a little chandelier. And that is the only variety, to my knowledge, that is only a singular sex, which is female. That has to have pollen from another tree because it can't self-pollinate. Oh, sure. Without feedback. Yes, they will. Oh, yes. Yes, and we have a little electric process with our squirrels in our yard that keeps them away from there, because I just went to one of our trees yesterday, and it's one of our seedlings that we call pink ice, BB pink ice for B&B, and the little stinkers ate chewed each half of the pod off right at the end of the stem where it was connected to the tree. And so they took all the seeds on me. So, yeah, I'm not happy, and they won't be there for long. We'll have to relocate them. Let's see. But sometimes with plumerias, there is something called a heat splash. And going back to that mosaic virus, heat splashes, if you go from a regular temp to an inferno overnight, heat splashes can be a sign of the plant showing a little heat stress, which could change the red colorations in the flowers, where you get a splashing effect on the flowers too. So when that happens, if it's just happening on one flower or two flowers on the collection of flowers, that's fine. That's a heat splash. If it's mosaic virus, it's most likely affecting every single flower on the cluster. Plus, you can see it in the leaves and on the branch and on the leaf stems. So that's the minor difference between heat splash and mosaic virus on there. So let's see. Let's go into rooting cuttings. So when you make your cutting, and after you've treated the base of the cutting with a rooting hormone and the top of the tree where you made the cutting with cinnamon, you're going to let that cutting callus. Then once that cutting has calloused after a couple of weeks, you're going to take a very, very, very well-draining soil. We use 50% potting mix to 50% perlite. So it's very, very well draining. If you pour the water, it practically falls right through the pot. And that's what you want for rooting cuttings. We'll pot them up in a smaller container than this and fill it with that soil medium and perlite medium, pack it tight, and then we'll water it well once, which packs all of that soil and perlite together and holds the cutting upright. And you'll stick the cutting into that soil about 4 inches, by the way. And so then you'll put it out into a really hot, indirect situation for sunlight and leave it there. And don't water it again until you have a nice crown of leaves on it. So some people water it all the time, and then you wind up rotting it because it just sits in that wet for a little bit, and there are no roots to absorb it. So the cutting will rot. But we did once have an issue where we had a sprinkler burst, and where we had a big rooting cement platform, and the water was running across the cement platform, and so it got the bottom of the soil wet in the pot, and we discovered that the cuttings actually liked that. They sent a brand new root right away to that water source, and we found that the cuttings will actually root a little faster from underwatering like that. So as long as you don't go crazy with it, you can do it from time to time, and the plant will sense the moisture there and will grow the root to get there to absorb that moisture. But most of the time, keep it as dry as possible, except for that little underwatering here and there. We will root all of our cuttings in a 4 by 4 by 4 or 5 inch deep pot. And we keep it tight like that and keep them all packed together so they're all standing each other up, and put it in a very hot area, very bright hot area, but not direct sun. And that will 30 to 90 days later, you'll have a nice crown of leaves, and 9 times out of 10, the cutting will have roots. Sometimes Mother Nature throws you a curveball, and even though you have all those leaves up there, not one root. So it just needs to marinate and root a little bit longer. So we're there. Yeah. And let's see. We can talk about good pests and bad pests. The good bugs are ladybugs, butterflies, moths, sphinx moths, aids in, as we said, pollination. The bad bugs, leaf miners, thrips, spider mites, mealybug, aphids. We don't, because we want to be kind to the environment, use a lot of insecticide, but when we see a little outburst of this somewhere in our nursery, we try and isolate it and then use as little bit of the product as possible to get rid of it. And all of these insects won't kill your plant, but they'll deform the leaves quite a bit and make the plant, from a visual standpoint, look a little ugly. But if you can tolerate that, then you don't even have to treat for that. Like I said, some people out there encourage the spider mites to grow, and then they have amazing seed pods from it because they crawl right down in there and pollinate the flowers. Rust fungus, who knows what that is? Anybody fighting rust fungus yet? Right. Rust fungus is a little orange dot that you'll see on the underside of the leaf. And the longer that it's there, the more that it'll propagate itself under the leaves. And before you know it, the entire underside of the leaf has that orange dot everywhere. From the top of the leaf, it looks like little yellow dots through there. The best thing to do, since there is no antidote to rust, is to cut off the most affected leaves, and very carefully, because if you snap that leaf, that rust spore will pop, and then you'll see this little orange cloud. And wherever that lands, guess who's going to have rust next? And so you want to try and carefully slice through that, throw the leaf in a covered trash can, and get rid of it. Don't ever, at the end of the season, let all the rusty leaves just drop off the tree and stay on the ground all winter, because that rust spore is still intact. And in the springtime, if you're walking through the leaves and crunching them up or using a leaf blower to move them, all of those spores will pop. And then all of a sudden, you'll have rust right away at the beginning of spring. So you don't want that to happen. The best thing to do is to clean it up right away and throw it in the trash covered and get rid of it as possible. Ways to slow rust down: nothing chemically. We used to have a product called Balaton, but it was banned by the Department of Ag, USDA, years and years and years ago. Then we were able to find it in lawn fertilizers, and so we put lawn fertilizers on our plumeria, and then they banned it from lawn fertilizers. So we don't have it at all. But the only thing that it did was it slowed the spread of the rust down. It didn't prevent it from happening. And so what we do now is if your canopy is very densely packed with leaves, anywhere where the leaves are actually sitting over one another in really humid, really wet environments, that's where the rust is going to form first. So cut about a third of the leaves out of your canopy with a nice clean blade, and then toss it when you move to the next tree, as I said. If you cut the third of the leaves off, you're increasing the airflow in the canopy, and that in itself is going to slow the spread of the rust fungus down. So you're never going to get rid of it completely, but you can slow it down. So, okay. Has anybody ever had black tip on their plumerias? Black tip looks like just what it sounds like. The tip of the plumeria actually turns black. Any little leaves growing out of the tip will also turn jet black, and it will deaden that tip on the plant. Many people say, oh, just cut it off and you're done with it. But why would you want to make a raw spot on your plant if you don't have to? Most of the time, the plant will heal itself beneath the black tip, and it will then branch out automatically around it. And you'll never have to make a cut. You'll never have to do anything. But if you want to use a fungicide to help the plant along, I recommend, and they don't have it here, but it's a thiamel product from Southern Agriculture, and it is a powdered fungicide. We make a paste out of it with a little bit of water into the powder, and that will actually paint onto the tip with a brush. And then we make a drench out of it with more water and a little less of the thiamel, so it looks like a very watery milk. And we'll water that into the plant. We'll also drench the plant with it. And that is a good fungicide to get rid of black tip. It works very well with just 1 or 2 applications, or just let the plant heal itself. If you want to follow it, put a Sharpie mark on the branch, a ring that's just beneath where the black tip is, and then watch it. If the black tip continues past your ring, then you know it's spreading and you might need to cut it at that point or use the thiamel. But if it's not expanding, then it's probably healed itself already, and then we'll begin branching out around it, so you won't have to worry about the plant.